It started with the heat. That's what I remember most about that Tuesday. A thick, soupy New York summer heat that clung to your skin the moment you left the air conditioning. It was the kind of heat that made everything feel slow and slightly unreal. I was with Chloe, and we were descending into the 14th Street Union Square station, a place I'd been 1,000 times before. It was just a Tuesday. It was just a subway station. Chloe was a friend from a graphic design class I'd taken the previous semester. We'd kept in touch, bonded by a shared sense of being slightly adrift in the city. That day we were heading downtown to look at some overpriced vintage furniture for her new apartment. She was walking a step ahead of me on the stairs, and I was, not for the first time, acutely aware of her body. She was wearing these faded, tight-fitting jeans that hugged the curve of her hips in a way that made it difficult to look anywhere else. A simple black tank top was plastered to her back with a faint sheen of sweat, the thin straps digging into her skin. Her dark hair was piled up in a messy bun, exposing the delicate, pale line of her neck. I had a sudden intrusive image of pressing my lips right there, just below her ear, and feeling her shiver. I shook my head, feeling a flush of guilt. She was just a friend. But in that heat, with the city pressing in on all sides, my thoughts felt sticky and unruly. The station was its usual self, a cacophony of scents and sounds. The damp, metallic smell of the tunnels mixed with cheap perfume and roasting nuts from a vendor upstairs. The air was a physical presence, heavy with the breath of 1,000 strangers. We swiped our Metro cards and pushed through the turnstiles, the clatter echoing under the vaulted ceiling. Our destination was the downtown 4/5/6 platform. That's when I first noticed the silence. Not a true silence, but a peculiar lull. The usual din of chatter, busker music, and rumbling trains was there, but the automated announcement system, the calm, female digital voice that endlessly recites stops and safety reminders, was quiet. It was a small thing, but its absence was like a missing tooth. Your tongue keeps finding the empty space. Weird, Chloe said, echoing my thought. She fanned her face with a folded flyer. It's too hot for the robots to function. I grinned. Maybe they unionized. We found a spot on the platform, leaning against a grimy tiled pillar. I was hyper-aware of Chloe standing next to me, the way her chest rose and fell with each breath, the slight shift of her weight from one foot to the other. She had taken her sandals off for a moment, wiggling her bare toes on the dusty concrete. Her toenails were painted a chipped, dark burgundy. I found myself staring at the delicate bones of her ankles, imagining my hand circling one, feeling the pulse point there. It was a stupid, distracting thought. I forced my eyes away, scanning the platform. That's when I saw him. He was standing alone, about 50 feet down the platform, near the edge. He wasn't doing anything unusual. Just standing, but there was something about his stillness that felt wrong. Everyone else on the platform was in motion, shifting, checking phones, pacing. He was a statue. He was tall and gaunt, wearing a heavy-looking dark wool coat that was utterly inappropriate for the weather. His hands were buried deep in the pockets. His face was pale and oddly elongated, his features sharp. He wasn't looking at the tracks or his phone. He was looking directly at me. A cold trickle of unease ran down my spine, cutting through the heat. I looked away, pretending to study a graffiti tag scrawled on a poster. "What's up?" Chloe asked, noticing my tension. "Nothing," I said too quickly. "Just some weirdo." She followed my gaze. "The guy in the coat? Jesus, he must be melting." She shuddered, a movement that made her breasts press against the fabric of her tank top. I looked back at her, the image of the man momentarily pushed aside by a fresh wave of inappropriate attraction. I felt a knot of conflicting emotions. Fear, desire, guilt. It was a messy, uncomfortable cocktail. Then the speaker above us crackled to life. The sound was wrong. It wasn't the clean, digital tone I was used to. It was layered with a faint, whispering static, like an old vinyl record playing in another room. The voice began its familiar spiel. "This is a downtown 6 train," it started, and then it stuttered. The static swelled. "To Brooklyn Bridge City Hall." There was a pause, longer than it should have been. The air felt thick. Then the voice returned, softer, almost conversational. "The next stop is the slow, certain knowledge that you will die alone in a rented room." I froze. I must have misheard. The heat was getting to me. Chloe was still fanning herself, seemingly oblivious. She hadn't reacted. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice tight. Hear what? The train? She nodded towards the tunnel, where the distant lights of an approaching train were now visible. No, the announcement. She gave me a funny look. It just said it was a 6 train, Mark. You okay? You look pale. The train was getting closer, its roar beginning to fill the station. I looked back down the platform. The man in the coat was gone, vanished. There was no place he could have gone that quickly. A fresh chill, deep and cellular, settled in my gut. We boarded the train. It was mercifully cool inside, the air conditioning a blessing. We found seats and the doors slid shut with a hydraulic hiss. I kept scanning the car, half expecting to see the gaunt man sitting in a corner, staring, but he wasn't there. Chloe was talking about the merits of a tulip-shaped table lamp she'd seen online, but I couldn't focus. My mind was replaying the distorted announcement. The slow, certain knowledge that you will die alone in a rented room. It was a fear I'd never voiced to anyone. A deep, private dread that sometimes visited me in the dead of night. The idea of my life amounting to nothing, of my eventual death being a solitary, unnoticed event in some anonymous space. How could a subway announcement know that? It was impossible. A glitch. A weird audio pareidolia, where my brain assembled random noise into something meaningful. I tried to push it out of my mind. I focused on Chloe. She had crossed her legs, and the motion drew my eye to the line of her thigh, taut against the denim. The strap of her sandal was cutting into her instep, and I had a sudden vivid fantasy of kneeling down and loosening it for her, my fingers brushing against her warm skin. The train lurched, and her shoulder bumped against mine. A jolt of electricity shot through me. She didn't pull away immediately, and for a second we were just 2 points of contact in the rattling, crowded car. I could smell her shampoo, something with coconut. The normalcy of it was a lifeline. We got off at our stop, did the furniture looking, had an overpriced iced coffee. The incident at Union Square faded into the background, a strange blip. By the time we were heading back, the sun was setting, casting long, distorted shadows down the cross streets. We were both tired and quiet on the return trip. We changed trains at Union Square again. As we walked back onto the same platform, a sense of déjà vu washed over me. It was less crowded now, the evening rush thinning out. And there he was, the man in the coat. In the exact same spot. Still as a sentinel, his coat seemed even darker. A blot of midnight in the yellowish platform light. His hands were still in his pockets, and he was staring right at me, his gaze unwavering. My blood ran cold. Chloe saw him too this time. Her hand instinctively found my arm. Mark, that's him again. That's the same guy. I know, I whispered. We moved to the opposite end of the platform, putting as much distance between us and him as possible. I kept my eyes locked on him. He didn't move. He just stood there, a fixed point in the shifting crowd. Then the speakers crackled, that same static whisper. This is an Uptown 5 train. The voice began. It was the calm female voice, but it sounded tired now, strained. The next stop is, the crawling sensation in your gut when you realize your father was right about you. I flinched as if struck. My relationship with my dad was a quiet, cold war of disappointed expectations. He thought I lacked ambition. That my life in the city was a prolonged adolescence. I'd spent years trying to prove him wrong, and failing. The announcement had just vocalized my deepest insecurity. This was no coincidence. This was targeted. Chloe was staring at me, her eyes wide. Did you just hear that? You heard it too? My voice was a dry croak. It said something about a father. She looked terrified. What is happening, Mark? Before I could answer, the voice returned, slower, more deliberate. The static seemed to form words of its own underneath. This station is the hollow space behind your smile when you pretend everything is fine for your mother. A small, choked sound escaped my throat. My mom. I called her every Sunday, and every Sunday I lied. I told her work was great, my love life was promising, the city was exciting. I painted a picture of a son who had it all figured out. The hollowness of those conversations was a physical ache I carried with me always. People on the platform were starting to notice. A woman clutching a shopping bag frowned up at the speaker. A man in a suit stopped texting and looked around, confused. It's him, I said, my eyes darting back to the man in the coat. He hadn't moved, but I saw it now, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his thin lips. The announcement system wasn't just malfunctioning, that IT was speaking to me, that IT was rifling through the locked drawers of my mind and reading my private fears aloud for everyone to hear. "We have to get out of here," Chloe said, her voice trembling. Her fear made her seem smaller, more vulnerable, that a strand of hair had escaped her bun and was stuck to her damp temple, that I had the insane, overpowering urge to pull her to me, to shield her with my body, but I was frozen, paralyzed by the disembodied voice. And the staring man. The speakers hissed again. "The next train is not a train. That IT is the sound of your own heartbeat, too fast, too loud, when you lie awake at 3 a.m., wondering if you are fundamentally broken." Tears pricked at my eyes. That was it, that was the core of it. The foundational fear upon which all the others were built. The suspicion that there was something essential missing inside me, a flaw that could not be fixed. The man in the coat took a single step forward. Panic erupted, that IT was a clean, sharp break from my paralysis. "Come on." I grabbed Chloe's hand and yanked her towards the exit. That we didn't run, but we walked fast, our footsteps echoing loudly in the now quiet station. That I dared a glance back. The man was not following, that he was just watching us leave, that faint, cruel smile still on his face. We burst out onto 14th Street, gasping in the hot, polluted air. That IT had never felt so good. That we stood there for a minute, leaning against a building, just breathing. "What the hell was that, Mark?" Chloe's face was ashen. "I don't know," I said, and it was the truth. "I don't fucking know." We parted ways with a hurried, awkward goodbye. I practically ran back to my apartment in Astoria, locking the door behind me and leaning against it, my heart still hammering. That I poured myself a whiskey, my hands shaking so badly I spilled some on the counter. For the next few days I was a ghost. That I called in sick to work, that I couldn't face the subway. The world felt thin, like a painted backdrop, and at any moment something monstrous could tear through. I was obsessively checking the local news and MTA service alerts, looking for any reports of system malfunctions or anything. There was nothing. My phone felt like a live wire in my pocket. That I was terrified it would start speaking to me in that static-laced voice. That I found myself staring at my reflection in the dark screen of my TV, wondering if I looked fundamentally broken. The sexual thoughts about Chloe had vanished, replaced by a different kind of fixation. I kept replaying the way her hand had felt in mine, not with desire, but with a desperate need for a tether to reality. That I thought about the delicate bones of her ankle, not with lust, but with a profound fear for her fragility in the face of whatever that was. On the fourth day, my phone buzzed. That IT was a text from Chloe. *K, you okay? I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. We met at a bar in my neighborhood, a place with dim lights and loud music, a deliberate choice. That we needed noise to drown out the memory of that station's silence. She looked tired. She was wearing a loose-fitting sweater and jeans, and for the first time, I didn't feel a flicker of attraction. That I just felt a shared, bone-deep weariness. "I went back," she said, swirling the ice in her glass. "Yesterday." "You what?" "Why?" "I had to know." I thought maybe we'd imagined it. The heat, you know?" She took a shaky breath. "It was normal, Mark. Completely normal. The announcements were fine. The guy wasn't there." A part of me was relieved. Maybe it had been a shared hallucination. A mass hysteria event triggered by the oppressive weather? But the other part of me, the part that remembered the specific, surgical precision of those spoken fears, knew that wasn't true. "It spoke to you too," I said quietly. "The thing about your father." She looked down at her hands. "My dad, he left when I was 7. The announcement, it said, 'The next stop is the empty chair at the dinner table that you still set, just in case.'" A single tear traced a path down her cheek. "I haven't done that since I was a kid, but I thought about it. I almost did it last week on his birthday. It's a stupid ritual." It wasn't stupid. IT was a private, tender grief that the machine or the man or whatever it was had violated. "It knows things," I whispered, "private things." We sat in silence for a long time. The noise of the bar felt like a shield. When we left, we hugged on the sidewalk, a long, tight embrace that was about comfort, not passion. I watched her walk away, her figure growing smaller under the streetlights, and I felt a protective dread settle over me. The next morning, I decided I had to go back. Chloe's confirmation had shattered the hope that it was a fluke. This was real. and it was connected to me. TOS that I had to face it, that I told myself it was to conquer the fear, but deep down, I think I needed to hear it again. To have my deepest self reflected back at me, no matter how horrifying, there was a sick allure to it. I went alone in the middle of the day. The station was bustling, normal, that I felt like an imposter in my own life. I walked to the downtown 4/5/6 platform, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. That I stood near the pillar where Chloe and I had been, and I waited. For an hour, nothing happened. Normal trains came and went, normal announcements played. The fear began to curdle into a strange disappointment. Had it moved on? Was I not interesting enough to haunt? I was about to leave when I saw him. That he wasn't on the platform, that he was on the opposite platform, the uptown side, standing in the same pose, hands in pockets, coat a black slash against the colorful subway tiles, staring directly across the tracks at me. The space between us was filled with the rushing air of a passing train, but his gaze never wavered. And then the speaker above me spoke. The static was back, louder this time, a rushing river of white noise beneath the words. "This is a downtown 6 train." The voice was a whisper now, a secret being shared just with me. "To the moment you first realized you were capable of genuine cruelty." A memory, long buried, surfaced. I was 14. I'd said something vicious to a younger cousin, something about his stutter, just to see the hurt bloom in his eyes. That I'd felt a thrill of power, followed immediately by a shame so profound I'd buried it. That I'd never told anyone. The voice continued, almost sighing. "The next stop is the face of the woman you love when she finally sees the cowardice in you." Chloe's face flashed in my mind's eye, not smiling but looking at me with pity and disappointment. The fantasy was no longer sexual, it was a premonition. That I looked across the tracks. The man was gone, but the voice wasn't finished. The static swelled, coalescing into a sound that was almost like breathing. "This station is me." The voice changed. It dropped an octave, losing its digital femininity, becoming something older, grainier. It was my own voice, played back to me with a stranger's inflection. "I am the things you keep in the dark. That I am the fear you taste in the back of your throat. You will come back. You need to hear the rest." The speaker crackled and went dead. That I stood there, rooted to the spot, as the crowd flowed around me. The world had not ended. The trains